Chapter 908. In fact, as long as Ziyuan can absorb the Morio that was born from the Miko's malice, she will be able to combine the malice that originally belonged to her and obtain the complete power of the Miko. Then she will have a certain chance to reach the six-path level. Because the Miko and the Morio are two sides of the same coin. Not only are the two similar in strength, but they both have the huge chakra of the tailed beast level, but they also reinforce and restrain each other. If one side completely absorbs the other, then the improvement in strength will not be as simple as 1 + 1. It's just that the risk is too big. If he is not careful, Ziyuan may be absorbed by the Morio, so unless it is a last resort, Hyojin will not take this risk. After leaving Naruto's room, you said to Hyojin, "Your training plan is so messy, but Naruto can still persist. Now that I think about it, it's really incredible." Hyojin nodded. "Well, but it's almost the limit. Naruto's physique and will are first class, but there are also limits. The current training volume has basically reached Naruto's limit. If he increases the training volume, it is likely to be self-defeating." You said, "It's not easy to do this to this extent." Hyojin smiled. The reason why he dared to be so reckless and give Naruto 100 times the training volume of ordinary people is because he found that the 9 tails in Naruto's body seems to be supporting Naruto. Several times when Naruto almost couldn't support it, it was the chakra that 9 tails secretly provided him. This small trick of 9 tails may be able to hide from Naruto, who is in extreme fatigue, but it can't hide from Hyojin, who has the Tenseigan and has been secretly watching Naruto. Logically speaking, 9 tails should hate Naruto because it was Naruto's father, 4 generations, Naruto, who divided and sealed it. But 9 tails obviously understands that once Naruto is captured by the Akatsuki organization, it will be the end of its life, so it secretly supports Naruto's training. And every time, he did it very secretly. He was a tsundere who scolded with his mouth, but his body was very honest. After chatting for a while, Hyojin sent Bell off and returned to his bedroom to retrieve his lightning escape clone. During the 4 months of training Naruto, Hyojin was not idle. First of all, he spent nearly 1.5 months, spending close to 150 million in total, to completely upgrade the Sky Fortress that was his base. And while transforming the Sky Fortress, he did not forget to restore the giant Tenseigan. It's just that it takes time for the Ryumyaku to restore its own chakra, so he can only replenish chakra for the giant Tenseigan every once in a while. After nearly 4 months of hard work, he finally used the Ryumyaku to restore the giant Tenseigan to its normal state. As soon as the giant Tenseigan recovered, Hyojin began various experiments. The first attempt was to absorb the Byakugan chakra from all the members of the Hyuga branch by controlling the giant Tenseigan. This attempt was made when the giant Tenseigan was still in its weak state. Hyojin did not dare to do it, because he was worried that the hungry giant Tenseigan would lose control and endanger the lives of all the members of the Hyuga branch. And after racking his brains to restore the giant Tenseigan's state, this attempt was much safer. In addition, after getting along with it for a period of time, this giant Tenseigan of the Hyuga clan has become more and more obedient to Hyojin, so Hyojin was able to operate it more and more smoothly. The experiment was carried out quietly. After several repeated attempts, Hyojin confirmed that the giant Tenseigan can indeed be used as a hub to connect him with all the members of the Hyuga branch. In other words, all the Byakugan chakra from the members of the Hyuga branch who are bound by the caged bird can be taken by him. The second attempt is to shield the caged bird function with the giant Tenseigan. Hyojin quietly did several experiments on Bell and found that it is indeed possible to shield the caged bird function on Bell's forehead through the authority of the giant Tenseigan, so that Bell can get rid of the caged bird shackles for a certain period of time. It's a pity that this kind of shield is temporary. After a period of time, the caged bird will naturally recover, so if you want to permanently shield the caged bird, you can only be like Hyojin and have a pair of Tenseigan. But if you want to completely remove the caged bird, even Hyojin himself can't do it. In addition, Hyojin also developed the Type 3 bioarmor on the basis of the Type 2 bioarmor. Compared with the Type 2 bioarmor, the Type 3 bioarmor is more stable and lighter, but its real specialty is anti-reconnaissance. In terms of anti-chakra perception and anti-pupil technique, the Type 3 bioarmor is very good. Once the Type 3 bioarmor is worn, whether it is a perception-type ninja or a pupillary ninja with Byakugan, they cannot detect the user inside the bioarmor. With this improvement, Hyojin was inspired by the Akatsuki ninja. The key to deceiving the Byakugan is that it can create false images of chakra, as well as the flow of chakra, causing the Byakugan's insight to fall into error. Therefore, Hyojin set up a special seal on the Type 3 bioarmor. As long as it is activated, it can simulate the flow of chakra for a period of time to deceive the Byakugan. The reason why Hyojin continued to develop the bioarmor is to accumulate experience and lay the foundation for the future development of the Yang release clone. As for the development of the Lightning release clone, Hyojin didn't fall behind. After entering the Lightning release clone with the Soul Descend technique, Kuroto got up and moved around. Every night, he would use this free time to develop the Lightning release clone. He didn't have to worry about Naruto because Naruto, who had accumulated a day's worth of fatigue, fell asleep the moment he went to bed. If it was a big training session, Hyojin would sneak out of the village and find a hidden place to train. Therefore, the development of this Lightning release clone was very fast. So far, Hyojin had reached the threshold of the Mist release blood limit, formed by the fusion of the Lightning attribute chakra and the Water attribute chakra. If it wasn't for the Lightning attribute chakra being too violent and hard to control, with Hyojin's experience in developing the Mist release blood limit, he would have completed the development of the Mist release. From this, it could be seen that this Lightning release clone was inferior to the previous Wind release clone. Previously, when Hyojin used the Wind release clone to develop the Magnet release, he also had to deal with the Lightning attribute chakra, but it was much easier than now. Here's the second update. Please support me with recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank the students who tipped me yesterday. Thank you. Chapter 909. Early the next morning, the first light of dawn had just pierced through the night sky. Before the sky was bright, Sasuke had already dressed up and arrived at the training ground where he had agreed to meet Kakashi. But after waiting for a long time, Kakashi appeared with a yawn. Sasuke said with a cold face, "Sensei Kakashi, you're late again." Kakashi replied casually, "I'm lost on the road of life." Sasuke looked at Kakashi suspiciously. With the inside of his Sharingan, he could clearly see Kakashi's hidden fatigue, so he questioned, "Sensei Kakashi, after you finish teaching me every day, do you have additional training yourself?" Kakashi was shocked, but he smiled awkwardly and said, "How could that be? Just dealing with you is already giving me a headache." Obviously, Kakashi did not relax his requirements for himself. In the past 4 months, as the Agent Naruto, he not only had to bear all kinds of cumbersome official duties that Hyojin threw at him, but he also had to carefully guide Sasuke, so he could only use his own rest time to make up for the training time, which led to his physical fatigue being seen by Sasuke. Sasuke did not dwell too much on this, and directly said seriously, "Sensei Kakashi, what are you going to teach me today?" Looking at Sasuke's face full of expectation, Kakashi secretly complained. Besides his own trump cards, the Flying Thunder God technique and the 8 inner hidden gates, he had already taught Sasuke 70 to 80% of what he could. Now that he thought about it, even he felt that it was unbelievable. Sasuke actually used only a short 4 months to make him, the #1 technician in have a ridiculous feeling that there was nothing to teach him. Seriously looking at Sasuke in front of him, Kakashi had to admit that Sasuke had changed too much in the past few months. The most intuitive feeling was that Sumo had grown up. His childishness and naivety had faded away. He was like a fledgling that had left the protection of its parents and was beginning to learn how to use its own strength to spread its wings and fly. For a ninja, such a change was undoubtedly a good thing. However, the change was too fast and too sudden. In just a few months it felt like a few years, so Kakashi did not know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. Moreover, Kakashi, who had been teaching Sasuke, could clearly feel the hatred in Sasuke's heart growing. This hatred towards Amatsukami kept eating away at Sasuke's soul, causing him to become more and more gloomy and cold, as if he had lost the ability to smile. At the same time, Sasuke's pupillary power was also increasing day by day. Although Kakashi has now lost the Manjikyu Sharingan in his left eye, his perception of the Sharingan's pupillary power has not deteriorated because of this, so he is the most aware of the improvement of Sasuke's pupillary power. In fact, he was even clearer than Sasuke himself. Such a kid, perhaps he is a real genius. Kakashi laughed at himself in his heart. He felt that compared with Sasuke, his so-called genius was a bit unworthy of the name. Seeing Kakashi has been silent, Sasuke became a little impatient. Kakashi, sensei, what are you going to teach me today? Kakashi, who recovered from his shock, smiled and said, the graduation exam of the ninja school is in 2 days. In the next few days, you should adjust your state and review the content I taught you before, and prepare for the graduation exam. Flying Thunder God Jutsu and Hashimen Tonku are not jutsu that can be easily taught. In particular, Flying Thunder God Jutsu is currently one of the top secret jutsu of the village, and it is also the only jutsu that ordinary ninjas can try to practice. Even if Hyojin, as Naruto, wants to see it, he needs to go through the advisory elder group. Therefore, even though Kakashi is the acting Naruto, he is not qualified to teach Flying Thunder God Jutsu to Sasuke. As for Hashimen Tonku, it is not something that can be taught casually. Firstly, this involves Guy. After all, Kakashi's Hashimen Tonku was taught by Guy, and secondly, Sasuke's identity is a bit sensitive after all, so the advisory elder group is still hesitant to teach him all the secret arts so early. Hearing Kakashi mention the graduation exam of the ninja school, Sasuke's face suddenly sank. Kakashi, sensei, do you think I should care about that kind of thing? Kakashi helplessly smiled bitterly. With Sasuke's current strength, the graduation exam of the ninja school is indeed a bit child's play. Sasuke said, since you have nothing to teach me, then I will practice by myself. Sasuke, don't underestimate your contemporaries, their progress during this time is not small, especially Naruto, just like you, he has undergone earth-shaking changes, if you take him lightly, you may lose to him. Kakashi couldn't help but remind Sasuke. Back then, when he first became a Jonin, he didn't put his contemporaries in his eyes at all. Under the influence of his father's prestige, he only had a higher level of strength in his eyes, and there was no room for the bottom of the ninja school. But now, those bottom of the ninja school, one has stirred up the wind and rain in the ninja world, one has become the 5th generation leader of Naruto, and the last one was unfortunately defeated in yesterday's race when he ran laps around He asked himself, those bottom of the ninja school, he doesn't seem to be able to beat any of them now. His life is simply gloomy. Sasuke looked back at Kakashi and said coldly, Naruto? Humph, he is not my opponent. After saying that, Sasuke no longer paid attention to Kakashi and walked all the way to the clan's land. In Sasuke's heart, Naruto is just a friend who needs his protection, not an opponent who can compete with him. The same is true for Ningxi. He doesn't put any of them in his eyes now. At this time, a figure flashed into his mind. This figure is none other than Kimimaro of the Sound Village, who humiliated him in the past. Now that he recalled that battle, Sasuke understood how big the gap between him and Kimimaro was at that time, and he knew that Kimimaro didn't mean to humiliate him at that time. It is precisely because he understood this that it is even more difficult for him to let go. Compared to humiliation, what's more difficult for Kuroda to accept is contempt. Kuroda can still remember the doubt on Kimamaro's face when he looked at him. The doubt seemed to be saying, "Hey, why is the famous Uchiha clan so weak?" Every time he recalled Kimamaro's expression, Sasuke's anger boiled. "Humph, I disgraced the clan in the past. This debt I must pay. Kimamaro, I will let you understand the true strength of the Uchiha clan." Sasuke firmly believes that he now has the strength to defeat Kimamaro. Here's the first one, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 9-10. In the blink of an eye, the day of the ninja school's graduation exam has arrived. In the Hyuga clan's land. After checking the various ninja tools on his body for the last time, Ningxi took a deep breath and strode out of his room. Today's graduation exam is very important for him, because Naruto will personally award the My Protector to the students who pass the exam, and as the disciple of Naruto, he must pass the exam with excellent results. Only in this way can he live up to his identity as the disciple of Naruto. Walking to the courtyard, Ningxi found his father Richa standing at the entrance of the courtyard, and quickly stepped forward and saluted. "Father." Richa looked at Ningxi from head to toe, and seeing that Ningxi was in high spirits, he nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, "How is the preparation?" Ningxi replied, "Please rest assured, I will not embarrass you and Sensei in today's exam." Richa pondered for a moment and said, "Ningxi, don't blame your sensei. I have already told you about the situation of Naruto. Protecting Naruto is your sensei's responsibility as Naruto. You have to learn to understand." Ningxi shook his head. "Father, I don't blame sensei. In the past few months, Hyojin has been carefully guiding Naruto, which indeed made him a little uncomfortable, but he already knows the special identity of Naruto's Jinchuriki, and he also knows that Naruto is an important target of the Akatsuki, so he doesn't blame Hyojin in his heart. If he has to say something, it's just that he is a little jealous of Naruto." Richa saw through Ningxi's careful thoughts at a glance and sighed lightly. "Well, it's been a troubled time recently, the matter of Akatsuki Aoki's betrayal, the matter of the Hyuga clan, all these things are on the shoulders of your sensei. The pressure your sensei is carrying is not something we can understand. The matter of Hyuga Aoki is still fermenting in the Hyuga clan. In order to cover up, the Hyuga clan announced the death of the Hyuga elder due to illness a few months ago, and skipped the link of visiting the body, quickly disposed of the body of the elder, and ended the funeral hastily. This may be able to hide from others, but not from Hisashi, who fought with Hyuga Aoki that night. Because Hisashi knew very well that Hyuga Aoki was heading towards the Hyuga clan that night, so most of the elders did not die of illness, but were killed by Hyuga Aoki. If this news were to be verified, it would mean that the Zone clan's several hundred years of absolute rule over the branch clan would be in imminent danger. This is definitely an earth-shaking event for the Hyuga clan, so during this period of time, Richa has been in an inexplicable dilemma. He hopes to get rid of the shackles of the caged bird, but he also doesn't want his clan to suffer misfortune in the turmoil. At this time, Ningxi bowed deeply to Richa and said, "Please rest assured, I only have gratitude towards teacher, I have no complaints. Today, I will use my strength to prove myself to everyone and win back teacher's attention." Uchiha clan grounds. Sasuke also woke up early today. He told Kakashi that he didn't care about the graduation exam, but deep down, he still cared about it. Arriving outside his brother Itachi's room, Sasuke hesitated for a moment and then knocked on the door. "Brother, are you up?" Itachi opened the door and smiled. "So early." Sasuke turned his head to the side and asked casually, "Brother, does father have any arrangements today?" Itachi guessed Sasuke's thoughts and said, "Father mentioned it to me yesterday. He said that he would go to the ninja school with mother today to watch your graduation exam." Sasuke's face flashed with a hint of disbelief. He immediately suppressed the joy in his heart and asked with a taut face, "Really, really?" Looking at Sasuke, whose eyes seemed to be shining, Itachi nodded gently. "Well, you have to do well today, and I will always pay attention to you." Sasuke nodded heavily. "Brother, I will be like you, easily get the first place in the same period." In the ninja school, because of the graduation exam, although it was still early in the morning, the playground was already very lively. The students gathered in groups of 2s and 3s. Their faces were either excited, anxious, nervous, or distressed. There were all kinds of expressions on their faces, and there was not a single one of them. On both sides of the playground, a stand was set up. On one side was the rostrum, where the high-level members of the village and the teachers of the ninja school were seated, and on the other side was the temporary stand, which was responsible for receiving the families of the students who were watching the graduation exam. The reason why it was so grand is that the students who graduated this year are very special. Among them, there were not only the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki and the seven-tailed Jinchuriki of the Takunin village, but also the geniuses of the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan, as well as Inoshikacho clan and the current Miko-sama of the Land of Demons, and so on. It can be said that this graduating class is the most special class since the establishment of the ninja school. Therefore, not only all the high-level members of the village, including Hyojin, but also the families of many students arrived at the ninja school early, ready to watch the upcoming graduation exam. And to everyone's surprise, the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Fuyue, also appeared accompanied by his wife. On the rostrum, Tsunade looked at Fuyue, who had lost his eyes in the temporary stand opposite, and frowned. "Why is he here?" The 3 generations on the side also showed puzzlement. Since the storm of that night, Fuyue, the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, has been living in seclusion. After all, with his arrogant personality and the shame of having his Manjikyu Sharingan taken away, he must be ashamed to see others. Therefore, it is reasonable to say that he should not attend a public occasion like today. In the playground, Sasuke, who has excellent insight, quickly noticed that the people around him were pointing and whispering about Fuyue, who had lost his eyes in the temporary stand. This made him feel very annoyed and touched. He believed that his parents had already expected this situation when they decided to attend his graduation exam, but his parents still came resolutely, so he made up his mind to repay his parents with the best results of his cohort. In the temporary stand, although he has lost his eyes, as a Kage class expert who has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, Fuyue is not like an ordinary blind person who knows nothing about the outside world. Therefore, he is well aware of the pointing and whispering around him, but he doesn't care. There is only one thing he cares about now, and that is to stimulate Sasuke to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Slightly perceiving the situation in the playground, Fuyue found his target. As expected of the 9 tails Jinchuriki, a very strong chakra. On the side, Mikoto Uchiha also looked at the target and said with a smile, "Well, Kushina's son is also a very good boy, whether we can succeed or not this time depends on him." The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly vote. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts yesterday, thank you everyone. Chapter 9-11. It didn't take long for Itachi to come to the temporary stands. Originally, as the vice principal of the ninja school, Itachi should sit on the opposite podium, but since Fuyue and Mikoto are present, he naturally has to accompany them as their son. After sitting next to his parents, Itachi said, "Sasuke is in a good state today." Fuyue asked, "Is everything ready?" "Yes." Itachi nodded slightly and said, "Naruto-sama has been training Naruto personally during this time, so there should be no problem." Mikoto was a little worried. "I heard that Sasuke has also made great progress during this time, Naruto. Will Naruto be the key person?" There is no doubt that the attendance of Fuyue and Mikoto this time was arranged by Hyojin. After figuring out the most effective way to stimulate Sasuke's emotions, Hyojin designed a series of stimulation plans, and today's ninja school graduation exam is a key stimulation plan. Just imagine Fuyue, who has lost his eyes, resolutely came to the ninja school to support Sasuke under the public's comments and even ridicule. This is a great encouragement for Sasuke. If he fails in front of his father's concern, Sasuke will inevitably bear great guilt. And this sense of guilt towards his father and the family's reputation will undoubtedly greatly stimulate his special emotions of protecting his family and loved ones. Today, Sasuke already has the 3-Tomo Sharingan, and there is no obstacle in awakening Manjikyu Sharingan. Therefore, as long as this kind of stimulation is enough, coupled with a key person that is enough to touch Sasuke's heartstrings, then it is possible for Sasuke to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan. One must know that both Jishui and Itachi awakened Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 11 or 12, so age is not an obstacle for Sasuke. Listening to his mother's question, Itachi also moved his gaze to the yellow-haired Naruto in the field. For some reason, Itachi always feels that Naruto is a very special child. This special does not refer to Naruto's Jinchuriki identity, but he feels that there is something about Naruto that he can't see through. After a while, Itachi said gently, "Mother, don't worry, Senpai has never made a mistake." Although Itachi doesn't know why Suijin chose Naruto as the key person to stimulate Sasuke, but he firmly believes that Suijin's decision will never be wrong. At the rostrum, when Kakashi saw Sasuke's eager face on the field, a look of suspicion appeared on his face. His gaze unconsciously drifted to Uchiha Fuyue in the temporary stands opposite him. Why is Sasuke suddenly so concerned about the graduation exam? Is it because his father is there? In the entire village, the only people who could accept the Uchiha clan without any grudge were Hyojin and Kakashi. In other words, Kakashi was the one who had the least prejudice against the Uchiha clan among all the village leaders. In this regard, he might have surpassed Hyojin. During the time he spent with Sasuke, he knew that Sasuke might look cold on the surface, but deep down, he was still a kind and even somewhat weak child. At the same time, Kakashi was also keenly aware that Sasuke was very eager to be recognized by his family. A word of praise from his brother Itachi Uchiha or his father Uchiha Fuyue can make him happy for several days, and the disappointment of his brother and father can also make him depressed for several days. Gradually, Kakashi's doubts became bigger and bigger. Strange, Uchiha Fuyue should know Sasuke. Why does he give Sasuke such pressure? At this time, as Naruto and the headmaster of the school, Hyojin slowly ascended the rostrum. Unlike the almost playful graduation exam in the original story, due to the turmoil in the shinobi world and the reform of the headmaster Hyojin, the teaching of this year's ninja school is very strict, even more so than the third shinobi war Hyojin. Therefore, the content of the graduation exam is not a simple test of taijutsu and sanjutsu, but real combat. Standing on the rostrum, Hyojin glanced at the students on the field and announced, "Today's graduation exam is actual combat. In addition to giant summoning beasts, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, ninja tools, small and medium summoning beasts, and so on are all within the scope of use." Before Hyojin's voice fell, the field was noisy. Although many students have guessed that the graduation exam will not be easy, but after hearing Hyojin announce the rules of the exam, many students still complained. How many monsters are hidden in this year's batch? The students are very clear. Not to mention ordinary civilian students, even the young masters of small and medium shinobi clans like Shikamaru and Ya are very nervous. Hyojin grinned and continued to announce, "In order to be close to actual combat, accidental injuries are allowed in this exam. Everyone must sign a life and death agreement before participating in the exam." After saying that, Hyojin winked at Irika and the other ninja school instructors on the side. Irika and the other instructors immediately came to the field with the life and death agreement, and asked the students to come forward one by one, sign their names, and press their fingerprints. Ninja is originally a profession that lives on the edge of a knife. Once they graduate from the ninja school, all the students will officially become the village's genin, carrying out all kinds of life-threatening tasks. Therefore, whether it is the senior members on the rostrum or the families of the students in the stands, none of them raised any objections to the signing of the life and death agreement. At this time, Hyojin emphasized, "Everyone, remember, if you seriously injure the opponent, the winner's rating will also be lowered." Sasuke and Ningxi on the field heard this and looked at each other. Both of them understood the meaning of Hyojin's words, that is, it is not enough to just defeat the opponent. To get a high rating, not only must you defeat the opponent, but you must also not injure the opponent's life. Simply put, it is to win with the lowest intensity in order to get a high rating. After announcing the rules and waiting for all the students to sign the life and death agreement, Hyojin did not delay and immediately announced the official start of the graduation exam. Soon, the matches began on the field under the attention of the village's senior officials and the students' families. The quality of the matches exceeded everyone's expectations. It can be said that every student on the field has a performance beyond ordinary genin, and some of the best can completely reach the level of chunin. After a few matches, Hyojin announced, "The next match, Hyuga Ningxi against Uzumaki Naruto." Ningxi on the side of the field was startled for a moment, and then his face sank and he strode to the field. Naruto laughed and said, "Haha, it's finally my turn to play." Sasuke on the side curled his lips and said, "Idiot, don't lose too badly." Naruto said confidently, "Don't worry, this time the first place belongs to me. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 9-12. In the middle of the field, Ningxi and Naruto stood looking at each other, and their hands formed the seal of opposition at the same time. Ningxi's eyes gradually focused and he said slowly, "Naruto, I'm really sorry, but I have to win this competition, so I won't show mercy to you." Naruto also put away his smile and responded seriously, "Bring it on. Naruto, you have to be careful." After exhaling, Ningxi opened the Byakugan and rushed to Naruto. Seeing Ningxi rushing over, Naruto immediately began to skillfully form the seal. In the temporary stands, looking at the seal formed by Naruto's hands, Richa's face turned cold. Naruto is going to use the multiple shadows technique? Kuroto taught him this forbidden technique? Hyojin's special training for Naruto was a secret of the village. Except for the advisory elder group and people who were very close to Hyojin like Bell, other people, including Richa, only knew that Hyojin had been training Naruto in the past few months, but they did not know the specific content of the special training. Therefore, when Naruto was going to use the multiple shadows technique, a forbidden technique that was extremely difficult for a Jonin to bear, Richa was quite surprised. Like Richa, all the families of the students who recognized the seal formed by Naruto in the temporary stands exclaimed. The reason why the multiple shadows technique was listed as a forbidden technique was not how difficult it was to practice, but the hidden dangers of this technique were so great that even a Jonin would not dare to use it easily. Therefore, there were many people present who knew about this technique, but not many had used it. Bam bam bam, in an instant, Naruto skillfully completed the multiple shadow clone technique. As the white smoke surged, one after another identical Naruto came out of the smoke and charged towards Ningxi. Shadow doppelganger? Ningxi's expression did not change as he watched Naruto emerge from the smoke. Even if he was surrounded and attacked by Naruto's doppelgangers, he wasn't worried at all. He had absolute confidence in his own physical skills and insight. Even if it was 1 against 5, 1 against 10, he wouldn't be afraid. Bam bam bam, however, the smoke from the explosion did not stop as he expected. Instead, it continued. In the blink of an eye, Naruto turned from 1 to 5, then to 10, and then to 100. In an instant, he had covered half of the field. This Ningxi's body froze and his brows furrowed tightly. So many, are they all shadow clones? How is this possible? With the Byakugan, Ningxi could tell with a glance that all the hundreds of Naruto in the field had a physical body. They were shadow clones with chakra flowing, and not clones that were used as a distraction. He's coming! At this moment, all the Narutos around shouted in unison. Amidst the layers of shouting, hundreds of Narutos charged towards Ningxi from all directions. Looking at the scene in the field, whether it was the ninja school instructors on the rostrum or the families of the students in the temporary spectator stand, all of them were dumbfounded. So many shadow clones? How did that kid Naruto do it? Hey, this is too much! This level of battle is just a normal graduation exam? In an instant there was a commotion in and out of the field, and there was a lot of discussion on and off the stage. The students who were watching the battle on the sidelines had different expressions at this moment. For example, the students who were familiar with Naruto, such as Shikamaru, Dinsei, and Ya, were all in disbelief after seeing Naruto's performance in the field. For example, Zuen, Sakura, Ino, and Tian looked nervous and expectant at the same time. And Hinata clenched her hands tightly. She hoped that her brother Ningxi could win, and at the same time, she hoped that Naruto could win. For a moment, her face was full of confusion and worry. Only Sasuke's expression didn't change, but his Scarlet 3 Magatama Sharingan showed that he wasn't calm at all. Without a doubt, Naruto's performance was also beyond his expectations, and he subconsciously opened his Sharingan to observe the battle on the field while thinking of a way to break Naruto's multiple shadow clone technique. In the field, bang 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 with every low muffled sound, there would be a shadow clone of Naruto turning into white smoke. Ningxi, who was besieged, didn't panic. He faced the enemy with the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams of the soft fist, shrinking the defensive circle to the smallest range of 1 or 2 meters around his body. His defense was stable, and any shadow clone of Naruto that invaded his defensive circle would be instantly defeated by his 64 palms of the 8 trigrams and dissipate like smoke. Hayashi, who was on the temporary stand, nodded and said to Richa beside him, "I didn't expect Ningxi to have mastered the 64 palms of the 8 trigrams at such a young age." Hizashi-sama smiled. Seeing that Ningxi was so stable in the field, he was already relieved. Even if Naruto had the strength of 9 tails, he couldn't exhaust Ningxi like this. After all, the consumption of shadow clones was far greater than the consumption of the soft fist. After defeating dozens of Naruto's shadow clones in a row, Ningxi panted lightly while looking for Naruto's real body in the field. Although he didn't lose out in such a battle of attrition, he had to conserve enough physical strength to deal with Sasuke. Therefore, he knew that he had to find out Naruto's real body immediately. It was just that things like shadow clones were very difficult to identify. Sasuke, who had rich combat experience in the original spacetime and had a 6 Magatama reincarnation eye, was also being played around by Naruto's shadow clones, and it was difficult to identify them in an instant. Similarly, after realizing that the shadow clones alone couldn't do anything to Ningxi, Naruto also stopped the pointless consumption and shouted, "Ningxi, I'm going to get serious." Ningxi said in a deep voice, "Come on." Naruto didn't waste any more time and immediately began to condense Rasengan in pairs, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of Rasengan lit up in the field. Ningxi was startled when he saw this. This situation was obviously beyond the scope for him. He didn't know what the chakra mass condensed in Naruto's palm was, but intuition told him that the small mass of chakra contained extremely powerful energy. On the rostrum, Kakashi also looked shocked and said to Hyojin next to him, "You taught Rasengan to Naruto?" Hyojin smiled and nodded. On the opposite temporary stands, feeling the violent chakra fluctuations in the field, Fuyue, who had lost his eyes, frowned. "This is," Mikoto explained, "it's the Rasengan of 4 generations." Not only did Naruto learn Rasengan, but he also released dozens of them at once. Fuyua said with emotion, 5 generations is really not simple. In just a few months, he has trained Naruto to this point. The other spectators also expressed the same emotion as Fuyua. The appearance of dozens of Rasengan was even more shocking than the appearance of hundreds of shadow clones just now. Sasuke's expression also changed at this time, murmuring, "Naruto, this guy." The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly vote. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts yesterday. Thank you everyone. Chapter 9:13. On the field. One after another, shining Rasengan was lit up in the palm of Naruto's shadow clone. Looking around, Ningxi's Byakugan vision was filled with these extremely compressed, twisted and rotating chakra orbs. These chakra orbs made him instinctively feel danger. What kind of ninjutsu is this? Ningxi's face became more and more dignified. The situation in front of him was far beyond his expectations. After completing the condensation of Rasengan, Naruto shouted, "Ningxi, you have to be careful, my Rasengan can even knock down a tree." Is this ninjutsu called Rasengan? Ningxi's breathing became a little faster, and the chakra orbs on his body became a little chaotic. Under the heavy pressure, his shortcomings of inexperience gradually emerged. On the temporary stands, Richa stood up with a swish, looking at the field with a face full of disbelief. Naruto not only mastered Rasengan, an A-class ninjutsu developed by 4 generations Naruto, but he can also condense dozens of Rasengan at one time with the help of the number of shadow clones, which is simply incredible. Not to mention a genin, even a chunin or even the vast majority of jonin can't do this. On the side, Hayashi also had a gloomy look on his face. Although Ningxi is a member of the branch family, he still represents the Hyuga clan, and he has the title of the genius of the Hyuga clan, so he naturally doesn't want Ningxi to lose to Naruto. But judging from the current situation, Ningxi's defeat is already certain. On the main stands, Tsunade turned sideways and said to Mute on the side, "Go, tell the medical team to be on standby." Mute immediately responded and hurried off the stage to make the necessary arrangements. On the other side, Kakashi stood up and focused his attention on the arena, ready to enter the arena to save his opponent. Although Naruto's understanding of Rasengan is still shallow, Rasengan is a ninjutsu developed by 4 generations imitating Jade-tailed Beast. It is the ultimate form of chakra, and its lower limit is much higher than ordinary ninjutsu. Even the Rasengan that Naruto is using at this time is far more powerful than ordinary ninjutsu, and a little carelessness can really cause death and injury. Thinking of this, Kakashi glanced at Hyojin beside him. However, he did not see any nervousness or worry on Hyojin's face. On the contrary, as the teacher of Ningxi and Naruto, Hyojin was unusually calm, as if he was an unconcerned bystander. In fact, Hyojin is indeed very calm. In the past few months, his guidance to Naruto, in addition to getting close to Naruto and improving Naruto's strength, is also to let Naruto stimulate Sasuke, through Naruto, the reincarnation of Azura, to stimulate Sasuke, the reincarnation of Indra, to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. The arrangement of Naruto and Ningxi is a test for Hyojin to Ningxi. For a ninja, the ability to resist pressure is also very important. Ninjas like Itachi and Kakashi have a strong ability to resist pressure. Even if they encounter a strong person whose strength is far beyond their own, they can calmly find a chance to win in a disadvantageous situation. Hyojin is full of expectations for Ningxi. He doesn't want Ningxi to be just a genius in cultivation. He hopes that Ningxi will become a tactical genius like Itachi. And in the current situation, Ningxi is not completely without a chance to win. Although Naruto has learned the multiple shadows technique and Rasengan, but like his strengths, he also has many shortcomings and flaws. As long as Ningxi can keep his heart, calmly find Naruto's flaws, and use them, it is not impossible to defeat Naruto. Rasengan continuous bullets. At this time, dozens of Naruto holding Rasengan in the field attacked Ningxi. Ningxi's eyes were scattered, and he panicked a little and immediately shouted, 8 trigrams palm, revolving heaven. Swish, in an instant, Ningxi flew up with himself as the center, and displayed the absolute defense of soft fist. Boom boom boom, one after another Rasengan hit Ningxi's revolving heaven, making a deafening roar, and the earth seemed to tremble. On the flat ground of the playground, cracks continued to spread, broken bricks splashed in all directions under the great force, and smoke and dust also rose. What the hell? Are these 2 kids still human? My graduation exam was not so terrifying. Are all graduates nowadays monsters? On both sides of the stands, whether it is the high level of the village, the teachers of the ninja school, or the families of the students watching on the sidelines, they all looked stunned and shocked at the moment. Even if it is a Chunin, it is difficult to make such a movement without the detonator, let alone 2 little kids who have not yet graduated from the ninja school. On the sidelines, Hinata's immature face was pale. She had already activated the Byakugan, and she was watching Ningxi and Naruto in the smoke and dust in a panic. The movement just now was too exaggerated, and she was very worried that Ningxi and Naruto would be injured. The other students were also talking about it, and no one expected that Naruto would force Ningxi, one of the Gemini stars of this year, into a desperate situation without entering the Sage mode. Sasuke, who was named the other of this year's Gemini stars, the 3 tomo on his Sharingan were slowly spinning. I can't resist it. Looking at the broken ground and the flying smoke and dust, Sasuke suddenly had a realization in his heart. Although he was not sure how much the cost of Ningxi resisting Naruto's Rasengan barrage was, but judging from the extent of the destruction of the playground, he knew that it was impossible to resist this kind of attack from Naruto. Richa in the temporary stands was slightly relieved, but his face was still solemn. Hayashi stood up inadvertently and said in surprise, "When did Ningxi learn revolving heaven? This kind of secret skill is not something he can master at his age, right?" Richa was not too proud and replied, "It has been a while since I learned revolving heaven." On the rostrum, seeing that Ningxi actually blocked Naruto's Rasengan barrage, the advisory elder group was quite surprised. Kakashi glanced sideways at Hyojin and said, "No wonder you are not worried at all." Hyojin shook his head and said nothing, but there was a slight disappointment in his eyes. When Ningxi was forced to use revolving heaven to resist Naruto's Rasengan barrage, Ningxi had already lost. Because of such consumption, Ningxi could only support one more time at most, but Naruto could hold on for a whole day. On the field, Ningxi, who was panting heavily, his chest was heaving violently like a bellows. As Hyojin expected, in order to block Naruto's Rasengan barrage, he consumed nearly 70% of his chakra. If this happened again, he would completely lose his combat effectiveness. At this time, Ningxi, who was panting like an ox, glanced sideways at Hyojin on the rostrum, looked at Hyojin's calm eyes, and said to himself, "No, I must not lose. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 9:14. Just as Ningxi looked at Hyojin on the rostrum, dozens of Naruto on the field also looked at the rostrum, looking at Hyojin sitting there. Just like Ningxi, Naruto also had a reason not to lose. Naruto's disciple should get the title of first in the same batch. This very simple thought filled the hearts of Ningxi and Naruto, making them concentrate and enter a kind of unprecedented concentration, as if everything around them had disappeared, and there was only the opponent in front of them in their eyes. Hyojin let out a soft sound. At this moment, he found that the aura of Ningxi and Naruto had changed. These 2 kids seemed to have lost the impetuous and inexperienced students at the same time, and began to learn to fight like real ninjas. Obviously, Hyojin was not the only one who noticed this change. The 3 generations with the pipe in their mouths smiled with relief. Jiraiya on the side sighed and said, "For a short moment, I saw the shadow of Minato on Naruto." Tsunade said, "It seems that Naruto's potential is greater than we thought." In the field, knowing that he would lose if he continued to passively defend, Ningxi decisively gave up the tactic of drawing the ground to defend himself. His figure swayed, and he launched an active attack on Naruto, who was all over the field. Bang bang bang, under Ningxi's skillful soft fist, Naruto's shadow doppelgangers were constantly broken. For a time, the whole field was muffled and white smoke was bursting, and during the tossing and turning, Ningxi did not forget his goal. He used the gap between the attacks to activate the Byakugan with all his strength, trying to find the real body of Naruto among the dozens of Naruto's shadow doppelgangers. In the face of Ningxi's sharp physical skills, Naruto did not sit still and wait for death. He mixed his main body with the many shadow clones, and then paired them up to recondense the Rasengan. Facing the Rasengan again, Ningxi was much calmer than before. This time, he did not choose to fight head-on. Instead, he used the inside of his Byakugan, the sharpness of his soft fists, and the speed of his body to engage in a guerrilla battle with Naruto. Boom, 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 Naruto's attacks again and again were all narrowly avoided by Ningxi, and Naruto's Rasengan hit the ground, and suddenly a big pit burst out on the ground, making a burst of roars. In the blink of an eye, the field was full of potholes, gravel flew, and smoke and dust rose. On the temporary stands, Richa stared intently at the field, his hands clenched tightly, and his heart was hanging in his throat. At this moment, Ningxi obviously found the right way to deal with Naruto, but just now, he used Revolving Heaven to resist Naruto's Rasengan bullets, which was really too much of a loss. Not only was he slightly injured, but his chakra was also seriously damaged. So much so that at this moment, the movement of his soft fists was a little distorted, and his speed was a lot slower, and he was almost hit by Naruto's Rasengan several times. It can be said that at the moment, both sides have a chance of winning, but who can win depends on who has better toughness and perseverance. At the other end of the stands, Itachi, who was sitting upright, looked at the battle in the field with a little regret on his face. When instructing Ningxi, he found a weakness of Ningxi, or rather, a bad habit of Ningxi, that is, Ningxi has an almost blind confidence in the soft fists of the Hyuga clan. As a result, when Ningji faced his enemies, the tactics he used would habitually accommodate his soft fists, and he would be bound by the soft fists routine. Just like just now, because of his blind confidence in the defensive ability of soft fists, when he was besieged by Naruto's shadow clones, he did not prioritize thinking about how to get out of the disadvantageous situation, but habitually followed the characteristics of soft fists, letting himself be besieged, hoping to find the enemy's flaws in his defense. As a result, he was caught off guard by Naruto's Rasengan bullets, which consumed more than half of his chakra in vain, and also caused him to suffer minor injuries, causing his physical function to decline significantly. Such a mistake is undoubtedly fatal in actual combat. Itachi doesn't know who instilled this concept of soft fist supremacy into Ningxi, but it can't be Hyojin, who rarely uses soft fists. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, it is not convenient for him to comment too bluntly on the shortcomings of soft fists of the Hyuga clan, so he only tactfully reminded Ningxi a few times, but the effect was not ideal. And today, Ningxi paid the price for his bad habit. In the eyes of most people, the battle on the field may still be in a stalemate, but in Itachi's eyes, the outcome of this battle has already been decided. Not only did Ningxi's chakra consume a lot of energy, but he also didn't quickly find a way to find Naruto's real body from the many shadow doppelgangers. On the other hand, Naruto seemed to have just finished warming up, and he didn't look tired for the time being. And every time Ningxi finally solved Naruto's shadow doppelgangers, Naruto would use multiple shadow doppelganger technique again, and then his real body would continue to blend into the shadow doppelgangers. Therefore, the number of Naruto's shadow doppelgangers in the field did not continue to decrease because of Ningxi's offensive, but maintained a large number of dozens. If Ningxi hadn't been exhausted and injured before, the outcome of the battle would still be uncertain, but with the previous mistake, Ningxi's defeat was only a matter of time. Boom boom, Naruto's Rasengan offensive continued. One after another Rasengan brushed past Ningxi, and then smashed on the ground, making a loud noise. Suddenly, a crushed stone the size of a thumb flew towards Ningxi. With Byakugan's insight, such a flying stone shouldn't be able to hurt him. It's just that Naruto's attacks were too fierce, and his status was declining, so this broken flying stone became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Pa! The flying stone hit Ningxi's cheek, distracting him for a while, and at this time, Naruto's new wave of offensive was in front of him. It's too late to dodge. Shocked, Ningxi had to use Revolving Heaven again. Boom! Naruto's Rasengan and Ningxi's Revolving Heaven fought head-on for the second time today. With a loud roar, both figures were sent flying. Bang! Naruto's shadow clone turned into white smoke. Ningxi, who was also sent flying, couldn't get up because the second Revolving Heaven had consumed all of his chakra, leaving him sore and weak. At this time, Hyojin stood up and announced, "The winner of this match is Naruto." With Hyojin's announcement, the medical class that had been on standby immediately entered the field and brought Ningxi to the side of the field to start treatment. Sasuke, who was also at the side of the field, looked at the potholes all over the field and fell into deep thought. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts yesterday. Thank you everyone. Chapter 9:15. After the battle between Ningxi and Naruto ended, the school slightly leveled the field, and then began the next match. The next few matches were also very exciting. The performance of the students all exceeded the level of ordinary genin, but because the previous battle between Ningxi and Naruto was too intense, the audience seemed to be still immersed in that battle, so the response to the subsequent matches was mediocre. It was not until the match between Shikamaru and Sakai began that everyone's mood was aroused again. Shikamaru is the brain of the new generation of Inashikato, not only the Nara clan, but even the Yamanaka clan and the Akimichi clan have high hopes for him. He is recognized as a genius by the three clans, and he is also the pillar of the three clans to maintain the status of the three clans in the village in the future. He is the focus of the three clans. Because of Hyojin's reform of the shinobi school, and the tense situation in the shinobi world, the training of Shikamaru by the three clans is more rigorous than in the original story, which also makes Shikamaru's potential to be excavated earlier than in the original story. Sakai was born in the root. After Danzo became the acting Naruto, he was sent to the ninja school by Danzo to be responsible for monitoring the two Jinchuriki, Naruto and Fu, as well as Uchiha Sasuke. With the defection of Danzo and the disbandment of the root, the three generations felt that Sakai's aptitude in all aspects is very good, so they removed the curse for Sakai and changed his identity to an ordinary ninja. One is the genius of the three clans of Inashikato, the other was the leader of the root. The match has not yet begun, but the audience has already aroused a strong interest, and after the match began, the special fighting methods of the two sides aroused the curiosity of many people. Both of them were using secret technique. Shikamaru was using the shadow secret technique passed down from the ancestors of the Nara clan. He could use inconspicuous shadows to confine the enemy, control the enemy, or even directly attack the enemy. What Sai used was a secret technique called Forged Super Beast Painting that he collected from his root. It allowed him to draw on a special scroll to create a special summoned creature that was made of ink paintings. It was worth mentioning that Sakai was one of the few ninjas in the village who had the ability to fly, which was one of the reasons why the 3 generations valued him. Therefore, the match between Shikamaru and Zue was completely different from the match between Ningxi and Naruto. If the battle between Ningxi and Naruto was a head-on battle, a battle between taijutsu and ninjutsu, then the battle between Shikamaru and Sai was a battle between secret techniques, a battle between wisdom and tactics. Although the movement of this battle was not as big as the one between Ningxi and Naruto, the scope of the battle was larger and more three-dimensional. The battle on the ground gradually evolved into a battle between the ground and the air. Sai used his advantage of flying to launch a fierce attack on Shikamaru in the air. Similarly, because of flying in the air, Sai's shadow on the ground was larger and more conspicuous. Therefore, although Shikamaru did not have any means to fight against the air, it was not that he did not have the power to fight back against Sai in the air. After a battle, Shikamaru finally won. He used himself as bait to lure Sai into a trap and barely won the match. On the side of the field, listening to the applause of the crowd for Shikamaru, Sasuke looked serious. There was no doubt that the performance of Shikamaru and Sai had also attracted his attention. He originally thought that he only needed to pay extra attention to Naruto and Ningxi in the same batch. He did not expect that Shikamaru, who was usually free and undisciplined, and Sai, who was taciturn, would also have extraordinary strength. After the applause stopped, Hyojin stood up and announced, "Next match, Uchiha Sasuke vs. Lilac. Finally, it's my turn." Sasuke's spirit was lifted when he heard that, and he strode to the field. Kuroto, who has watched several matches from the sidelines, has long been ready to go, and he can't wait to show everyone the strength of the Uchiha clan. On the other side, Guy patted Xiaoli's shoulder. "Let's fight." "Xiaoli was touched, sensei." "Xiaoli. Sensei. Xiaoli. Sensei." Muted Iin could not bear to watch any longer and urged, "Hurry up and go on stage, everyone's waiting." Under Mute's urging, Xiaoli looked at Sasuke in the field and could not help but ask Guy, "Sensei, can I really defeat Sasuke?" Guy gave Xiaoli a thumbs up without hesitation. "You can do it, you are my disciple." "Yes." Xiaoli, who was a little nervous before, was immediately full of confidence after seeing Guy's smiling face. Guy laughed, "Don't worry too much, just enjoy the battle." Xiaoli did not hesitate anymore and jumped to the center of the field. At this time, Guy murmured, "Konoha's dark blue beast will bloom again today." On the main stand. When it was Sasuke's turn, Kakashi became lazy. No one knew Sasuke's progress better than him, so other than Naruto and Ningxi, who had a certain chance of defeating Sasuke, the other students in the same batch should not have a chance of defeating Sasuke. When Xiaoli came to the field, his face sank and he wondered, why does Xiaoli look a little strange today? Obviously, Kakashi noticed that Xiaoli's movement was much more agile than before. No, it should be said that she was a completely different person. Hyojin said lightly, "Oh, she did not bring any weights today." Kakashi raised his eyebrows. "You didn't bring any weights?" Because of his busy work and the need to carefully guide Sasuke, Kakashi did not know much about ordinary students like Xiaoli. He only knew that Xiaoli was chosen by Guy and accepted as a disciple. Therefore, he didn't know how much the weight Kuroto mentioned would affect Xiaoli's speed, and he still had some doubts in his heart. He didn't understand why Kuroto emphasized such a trivial matter as not carrying any weight. On the temporary stand, Fuyua asked, "Who is the opponent?" Mikoto shook her head. "I am not very familiar, I don't think I have heard of him." At this time, Itachi explained to his parents, "The opponent against Sasuke is a child named Lilac." Fuyua asked casually, "Is he strong?" Itachi thought about it seriously and replied, "It's hard to judge. This child is not good at ninjutsu, illusion, and has not even mastered the most basic three-body technique. But he has a tenacity and is very talented in physical skills." Fuyua's face showed the usual banter of the Uchiha clan, "Only physical skills. For the Uchiha clan, who had Sharingan, excellent dynamic capture ability, and specialized in illusion, a pure physical skill ninja was a dead fish on the chopping board, and they could deal with it as they pleased. Itachi opened his mouth, but in the end, he chose to remain silent. On the field, Sasuke, who deliberately turned off his Sharingan before going on the field, said to Xiaoli, "Hurry up, today's time is very tight." The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 9:16. Looking at Sasuke's relaxed face, Xiaoli said seriously, "Sasuke, please recognize Shinichi, because I will do my best in this battle." Sasuke raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't talk nonsense, let's start." Xiaoli didn't say anything else and put on a iron fist style stance. At this moment, his entire aura changed dramatically. Sasuke didn't take it easy. He immediately lowered his center of gravity and put one of his hands into the ninja bag on his waist. Xiaoli had never been on his list of focus, so he didn't want to waste too much time on Xiaoli. He wanted to finish the battle quickly and leave Chakra to deal with Naruto. Swish, just when Sasuke was thinking about how to finish the battle quickly, Xiaoli's figure flashed and suddenly disappeared from Sasuke's sight. Huh? Sasuke was surprised and subconsciously opened his Sharingan. When the black pupils in his eye sockets turned into scarlet-red Sharingan, he finally saw Xiaoli's figure clearly. It was dragging a long afterimage as it rushed toward him from the side. Mai's whirlwind! While shouting, Xiaoli launched the first round of attack. So fast! Suppressing the surprise in his heart, Sasuke immediately raised his arms in front of his body to protect himself. Bang! Xiaoli's flying kick landed on Sasuke's arm and sent Sasuke flying. While flying in the air, Sasuke quickly adjusted his body and landed steadily on the ground. The relaxed expression on his face was replaced by surprise and seriousness. The 3 Sharingan on his Sharingan also slowly rotated. On the main stand, Kakashi was shocked. How can Xiaoli have this kind of speed? In terms of speed alone, the degree that Xiaoli showed has surpassed most of the Chunin ninjas. Even many Jonins are not a match for Xiaoli in terms of speed alone. Hyojin was also a little surprised. Of course, it was not Xiaoli's speed that surprised him. Xiaoli was chosen by Guy earlier than in the original time and space, and under the influence of Hyojin, Guy's potential was also more thorough than in the original time and space. So after removing the weight, Xiaoli's speed was expected by Hyojin. What really surprised him was Sasuke's adaptability. Seeing that Sasuke didn't activate his Sharingan as soon as he entered the field, Suijin thought that Sasuke would have to take a hard hit before he would learn to activate his Sharingan. But he didn't expect that under the training of Kakashi, Sasuke's adaptability improved so much. When he noticed that something was wrong, he didn't even bother to act cool. Not only did he instantly open his Sharingan and capture Xiaoli's attack, but the follow-up response was also impeccable, showing a strong responsibility. Guy on the side of the arena frowned and thought, such an attack didn't succeed. He is indeed a genius of Uchiha. I hope Xiaoli won't use that move. With that, Guy turned his head and looked at Hyojin on the rostrum. He didn't understand why Hyojin insisted on asking Xiaoli to use all her strength to fight against Sasuke in this ordinary graduation exam, but since it was Hyojin's order, he can only execute it. In the arena, Sasuke shook his arms that just blocked Xiaoli's My Whirlwind to dispel the numbness, and said coldly, "Last place, it seems that you are not as useless as I thought, but that was the only chance you had to hit me." Xiaoli put on the stance of Iron Fist style again. "Sasuke, you are finally serious." Humph. With a light snort, Sasuke grinned. "You seem to be very confident in your speed, then let me defeat you in an instant. I want you to understand that the speed that you are so proud of is not even worth mentioning in front of my Sharingan." Swish! With that, Sasuke's body swayed and disappeared on the spot like Xiaoli before. In an instant, 2 unbelievably fast afterimages were fighting on the field. From time to time came the sound of hitting and the sound of wind breaking on the rostrum. This is, Hyojin's eyes turned cold. The technique that Sasuke used could fool others, but not him, who has the Tenseigan. With just a glance, he found out that Sasuke stimulated the lightning release chakra in his body to stimulate the cells, greatly improving the body's function in a short period of time. Almost all the elite ninjas who were good at lightning release knew this technique. This was because under the strong stimulation of the lightning release chakra, the cell activity would greatly improve in a short period of time, and at the same time, it would bring speed and strength that far exceeded the normal. And Hyojin, who had been developing the lightning release clone body recently, had a deep understanding of this technique. According to Hyojin's speculation, this method of using the lightning release chakra to stimulate the body is very likely to be the primary form of the Cloud secret technique lightning release chakra mode. In other words, if he wants to develop the lightning release chakra mode, like the 4 generations laying, he must first master this method of stimulation and let the body completely adapt to this method of stimulation, so that his cells can completely accept the violent and disorderly lightning release chakra, and then let the lightning release chakra completely cover the whole body. In this regard, the violent lightning release chakra is much more troublesome than the gentle Tenseigan chakra. When using the Yin release body, even if Hyojin didn't know the technique of the Tenseigan chakra mode, he can still clumsily cover the whole body with the Tenseigan chakra, because the Tenseigan chakra is gentle and stable enough to not cause any harm to the body. But when using the lightning release clone body, Hyojin can only try a little bit carefully, because if he is not careful, the violent lightning release chakra may hurt the body's cells and meridians. Therefore, in Hyojin's daily development of the lightning release clone body, practicing this stimulation method is one of the most important subjects. On the sidelines. So fast, my eyes can't keep up with the two of them. When did Xiaoli become so powerful? Could it be that Sasuke is also going to lose? I don't think so. It can't be that both Ningxi and Sasuke will be defeated, right? They are the twin stars of our batch. It's already surprising enough that Ningxi was defeated by Naruto. If Sasuke is defeated by Xiaoli as well, then it'll be. Looking at the two people in the field who moved like ghosts, the students exclaimed and discussed among themselves. Naruto, who had just won, was also astonished at this moment. How did they do it so fast? Ningxi, who was defeated by Naruto and lying on the medical bed, was even more shocked. At this moment, he realized that not only Naruto improved rapidly, but even Xiaoli, who he usually didn't care about, had also changed. Why is this happening? Why did everyone become so powerful? In an instant, cracks appeared on Ningxi's sense of superiority as Naruto's disciple, the ninja with the pupil technique Kekkei Genkai, and the descendant of a rich family. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes to support me. Also, I would like to thank the students who tipped me yesterday. Chapter 9:17. In the field. Although Sasuke used the thunder release stimulation method, his speed and strength have greatly increased, and he also has the help of the Sharingan's dynamic vision, but he is obviously not used to this kind of physical confrontation at extreme speed. His attacks are sloppy, and his judgment is hesitant. On the contrary, although Xiaoli doesn't have the help of Sharingan, but he has been training with Sensei Guy for a long time, so his body has long been accustomed to this kind of speed confrontation. Even if his eyes can't capture all of Sasuke's movements, he can accurately respond to Sasuke's seemingly fierce attacks with his own intuition and body's instincts. Therefore, the two sides are evenly matched for a while. After a while, Sasuke had to stop his offensive and gasped for breath. Although the thunder release stimulation method is easy to use, it is difficult to maintain for a long time. In such a short time, Sasuke's body obviously can't bear it, and his legs even began to tremble faintly. This is why, even though many Thunder Release ninjas know this stimulation method, but only Cloud Village has figured out the advanced version of Thunder Release Chakra Mode. And even in Kumo, only the Reikage who has mastered the secret technique of Lightning Release Chakra Mode is able to do so because of his superior physical fitness compared to ordinary people. It's not that other people are stupid, but their bodies can't bear it. Humph! Glaring at Xiaoli, Sasuke spat lightly. Just now he said that he would quickly end the battle, but he broke his promise, which made him feel very embarrassed, especially in the case of his father, mother, and brother. Xiaoli, who was gasping lightly, sighed with emotion, as expected of Sasuke. I didn't expect him to have such a fast speed. You bastard! Xiaoli's honest sigh not only did not make Sasuke happy, but it made him even more annoyed. Because the speed just now was not his normal state, it was a temporary increase in speed using the Thunder Release Stimulation method, and Xiaoli, who is fighting fiercely with him, is the real normal state. This also meant that in terms of speed, Xiaoli, who was at the bottom, had surpassed him, the genius of the Uchiha clan. With that thought in mind, Sasuke guiltily glanced at his family members on the temporary stand. His father, who had lost both his eyes, was listening attentively with his head tilted to the side. There was even a faint hint of anticipation on his face. His mother even cast a concerned look at him. Beside her, her brother was full of smiles. Father, mother, brother, with his family's attention, Sasuke no longer hesitated. He made up his mind and said coldly to Xiaoli, "Hey, this ridiculous farce ends here." Then, with a series of sizzling sounds, Sasuke's right hand flashed with a dazzling electric light. At this time, Sasuke slowly spat out 2 words, 1,000 birds. Before his voice died away, the electric light in Sasuke's right hand became more and more dazzling, and the sound it made became sharper and sharper, as if thousands of birds had gathered in the forest. Seeing this, Xiaoli was slightly stunned. He knew that Sasuke was serious, so he turned his head to look at Kai, who was on the side of the field, and cast a seeking look. Kai smiled and gave Xiaoli a thumbs up, shouting, "Break out, youth!" Xiaoli, who was slightly panting, instantly calmed his breathing. With the sharp sound of the 1,000 birds in his ear, he whispered, 8 inner hidden gates, the first gate, open, open. Bang, a gust of air surged from Xiaoli's body. The second gate, rest gate, open. The airflow increased sharply once more, forming a cyclone visible to the naked eye beside Little Li. The third gate, life gate, open. When the third gate, life gate, opened, the huge cyclone formed waves of air, sweeping in all directions. Whether it was on the rostrum or the temporary stands, the audience were all shocked. Even though there were already ninjutsu and secret techniques like Rasengan, multiple clones, 8 trigrams palm reversal, shadow imitation, forged super beast drawings, and other ninjutsu and secret techniques, but when everyone saw Chidori and Hashiman Gate, they couldn't help but feel surprised. Kakashi, who had been sitting steadily, suddenly stood up at this time and blurted out, "Kai actually taught Xiaoli Hashiman Gate?" Kakashi was surprised not only because Kai taught Xiaoli Hashiman Gate, but also because Xiaoli, who was famous for being the last in the ninja school, actually learned Hashiman Gate. "This is incredible!" Hyojin, who was still sitting, smiled and said, "I don't know how many gates Xiaoli can open." When Kakashi heard this, he immediately focused on Xiaoli. He was also full of curiosity. He wanted to know how many gates this kid, who liked to wear funny combat clothes like Kai, could open. On the other side of the temporary stands, listening to the family members of the students constantly mentioning that Xiaoli was the last in the ninja school, Fuyue was speechless. Is there such a last place? Hashiman Gate is a secret technique that even a Jonin would find difficult to master. Mikoto on the side was also inexplicable. He was obviously just a very ordinary kid, but he suddenly used such a big move it was too surprising. If Fuyue and Mikoto were worried that Naruto would not be able to defeat Sasuke, but now their worries have disappeared, because it is difficult to say whether Sasuke can defeat Xiaoli. Compared to the others, Itachi was much calmer. First, they were colleagues in the ninja school. He was very clear about Kai's strength, so he did not underestimate Kai's disciple from the beginning to the end. Second, in his eyes, Sasuke still has a great chance of winning. The students on the sidelines all exclaimed. Especially some of the girls who admired Sasuke, all of them were nervous, as if the people on the field were them. Naruto scratched his head. So thick eyebrows are also hiding a unique skill. Ningxi on the medical bed was pale. Whether it was Sasuke's Chidori or Xiaoli's Hashiman Gate, both were far beyond his expectations. On the field, Xiaoli's eruption continued. The fourth gate, Gate of Pain, open. The cyclone expanded rapidly, and the airwave lifted the gravel and sand on the field, like sand and dust, sweeping in all directions. Sasuke, who was in the field, was no longer as confident as before. He covered his cheek with one hand, blocking the sweeping sand and dust, and held Chidori in the other hand. The 3 Magatama in his Sharingan were also flying quickly. Isn't this the technique that Kakashi-sensei used when he was competing for the 5th Naruto? After a pause, Sasuke's mind was filled with a kind of absurd feeling, and he wondered, how could Xiaoli know this level of secret technique? This is impossible, this is absolutely impossible. He really couldn't understand. Kakashi didn't even teach him this technique. How did Xiaoli learn it? The first update, it's almost Monday, all the rankings will be updated. Please recommend and support, it's nothing, please. Chapter 9:18. Looking at Xiaoli surrounded by a powerful cyclone, the chakra coming out of his body was so thick that it was almost visible to the naked eye. Sasuke's heart was filled with warning signs. Sasuke was no stranger to 8 inner hidden gates. He still remembered the battle between his father Uchiha Fue and Kakashi for the 5th Naruto. And in that battle, Kakashi had used the 8 inner hidden gates, and in front of everyone's eyes, he had forced Fugaku into a desperate situation after he had opened the Susanoo. Since then, Sasuke had a clear understanding of 8 inner hidden gates, and understood that this was a technique that could rival the Manjikyu Sharingan Susan. After opening the 4th Gate of Pain, Xiaoli on the opposite side stopped opening the gate. At this time, the skin on his body became red, as if his blood had completely boiled, penetrating into every pore of his body, and the blue veins on his cheeks were bulging. If the first 3 gates of 8 inner hidden gates only lifted the restrictions of the body, then after the 4th gate, Gate of Pain, he really stepped into the danger zone. At the same time, the greater the danger, the greater the reward. After opening the Gate of Pain, although the body's muscles, meridians, and even organs will be damaged to varying degrees, but the increase in speed and strength will be greater than when opening the first 3 gates. Bloom, youth! Xiaoli clenched his fists and shouted to the sky as if making a declaration. Seeing that Xiaoli could easily set off a wave of air with just a wave of his arm, Sasuke's eyes suddenly narrowed, and his face became more gloomy. At this time, Xiaoli slammed on the ground. Bang! In a loud explosion, the ground under Xiaoli's feet collapsed, and his whole body was like a cannonball, flying towards Sasuke. Feeling the huge shockwave coming towards him, Sasuke's face stiffened for a moment, then immediately made up his mind and activated his Sharingan to meet the incoming shockwave. Kuroto knows very well that if he is timid at this time, he will inevitably be thrown into confusion and be instantly defeated, so he can only choose to face the attack head-on, using the advantage of his Sharingan dynamic vision to find an opportunity to win in a disadvantageous situation. After all, the shining 1,000 birds in his palm was not to be trifled with. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, Xiao Li and Sasuke left long afterimages behind as they attacked each other on the field with a whistling sound and a sandstorm. While using the 4th of the 8 inner hidden gates to open, He also used the thunder escape stimulation law to stimulate all the cells in his body. In this high-intensity confrontation, both sides broke through their limits, displaying a speed far faster than before. On the sidelines, bursts of shock waves mixed with sand and gravel blew over, causing the students watching the battle on the sidelines to raise their hands to protect their eyes, watching the battle in the field with difficulty. In the crisscrossing shock waves, everyone could only barely see the afterimages of Sasuke and Xiaoli shuttling back and forth. They could not capture the specific details of their battle. Not to mention the group of students, even the teachers of the ninja school such as Irika, who had the strength of a Chunin, could not capture the details of the battle between Sasuke and Xiaoli in detail. At this moment, it can be said that Sasuke and Xiaoli have reached the level of a Jonin in terms of speed alone. They may not be able to last long, perhaps they lack combat experience and skills, and lack rich tactics, but in terms of speed, they can indeed be compared to a real Jonin. On the temporary stands, Fuyua asked anxiously, "How is it?" Having lost his eyes, he could not perceive every movement in the field in real time, so although he sensed that Sasuke and Xiaoli were fighting fiercely, it was difficult for him to grasp the details of the battle. Mikoto on the side stared nervously at the field while saying to Fuyua, "It's not good, Sasuke seems to be at a disadvantage." Sasuke's situation was indeed not very good, facing Xiaoli who had opened 4 gates. Even if he used the thunder release stimulation method, he was at a relatively obvious disadvantage in terms of speed. Even with the explosion of Chidori and the assistance of the Sharingan, he could not hurt Xiaoli at all. And Xiaoli, who had opened 4 gates, gradually adapted to Sasuke's physical style. Her attacks became more and more threatening, and several times she almost broke through Sasuke's defense. "Between the two of us, who will be the first to give up?" A thought flashed in Sasuke's mind, but he immediately dispelled it. "No, I can't just think about holding on, that's too passive." Swoosh! With such a distraction, Xiaoli's straight punch almost hit Sasuke's cheek. Although he narrowly avoided Xiaoli's straight punch, the wind brought by the punch blew on Sasuke's face, as if he was slapped hard, making Sasuke feel pain on his cheek. "Damn it, I can't treat this guy as the last in the line anymore." The burning pain on his face made Sasuke instantly alert. He realized that if he treated Xiaoli as the last in the line that could be easily defeated, he would be the one making a fool of himself. From this moment on, he must treat Xiaoli as a real strong opponent, only then would he have a chance of winning. With the adjustment of his mentality, Sasuke, who had gotten rid of his anxiety and embarrassment, quickly thought of a strategy. Bang bang bang! At this time, Xiaoli, who seemed to be stepping on the air, moved quickly around Sasuke, looking for an opportunity to attack. But Sasuke gave up moving quickly, and stood in place as if his physical strength was not enough. Swish! Xiaoli did not miss the opportunity, and immediately launched an attack, pouncing on Sasuke's back. On the rostrum, seeing Sasuke stop in place, Kakashi was shocked. Oh no! The thunder release stimulation method was taught by him to Sasuke, so he was very clear about Sasuke's limit, and the series of fierce battles just now had indeed reached the limit of Sasuke's endurance of the thunder release stimulation method. A trace of doubt flashed on Hyojin's face. Unlike Kakashi, who was confused because of his concern, he, who had the Tenseigan, was keenly aware that Sasuke seemed to be planning something, and he was not as helpless as he seemed to be on the surface. In just an instant, Xiaoli, with a whistling sound of breaking the wind, took advantage of Sasuke's back and punched hard. And at this moment, Sasuke turned around dexterously, looked at Xiaoli's eyes, and resisted Xiaoli's punch with his left arm. Bang! In the muffled sound, Sasuke's left arm was punched hard, and it was instantly dislocated. Ah! There was a sudden exclamation from many people on the sidelines, because this was the first time in the whole competition that Sasuke was hit by Xiaoli head-on without blocking. With just this one blow, Sasuke lost his entire left arm. Xiaoli, who succeeded in one blow, did not hesitate, and once again punched Sasuke. But just when everyone thought that Sasuke was bound to lose, Xiaoli, who was punching, suddenly stopped, and the straight punch stopped abruptly 2 centimeters away from the tip of Sasuke's nose. At this time Sasuke slowly closed the flying Sanmagaku Sharingan, and while gasping heavily, he muttered to himself, "I'm sorry, I must win this game." The second update is for Monday's recommendation votes and monthly vote. It's just a small effort. Please, everyone. In addition, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you. Chapter 9:19. Huff. Huff. Sasuke, with a thin layer of sweat on his forehead, gasped for breath while holding his dislocated arm. Originally, he was going to use taijutsu and ninjutsu to end the competition fair and square, but the result was that he made himself so embarrassed, and in the end, he had to use the genjutsu of Sharingan to barely win the competition. Yes, Sasuke used a genjutsu. After realizing that his speed, strength, and even endurance are completely behind Xiaoli, who has opened 4 gates, Sasuke had to use the genjutsu of Sharingan, using himself as bait, and at the cost of his left arm dislocated, he found an opportunity to use the genjutsu. And at the last moment, he successfully used the genjutsu to subdue Xiaoli. Slowly moving his head away from Xiaoli's fist, Sasuke was a little relieved. In fact, Sasuke's current level of genjutsu should be the worst among all the Uchiha clansmen who have 3 Sharingan, far less than genjutsu geniuses like Shisui and Itachi. But after all, he has a pair of 3 Sharingan, so using ordinary genjutsu is more than enough to deal with Xiaoli, who has no experience in dealing with genjutsu. At this time, a discussion broke out on the sidelines. What's wrong with Xiaoli? Did she get hit by a genjutsu? When did Sasuke use genjutsu? This is too unexpected. In the eyes of the other students, Xiaoli, who should have won, at the last moment, when her fist was close to the tip of Sasuke's nose, she was hit by the genjutsu of Sharingan and lost the competition. Naruto also scratched his head with a puzzled look. Why did Xiaoli stop? Ningxi, who was lying on the medical bed, said to Naruto with a solemn expression, "Naruto, if you meet Sasuke in the next match, try not to look him in the eyes." Naruto gave him a puzzled look. Why? Ningxi explained, Sasuke's Sharingan is the San Magatama Sharingan. Not only can he see the details of your body, but he can also capture and simulate your movements and ninjutsu. He can even cast genjutsu directly with his sight. Illusion? Is Xiaoli under an illusion? Ningxi nodded and said, without the corresponding pupil power, it is difficult for ordinary people to resist the genjutsu of Sharingan, so if you want to avoid being controlled by his genjutsu, you must always be vigilant of his sight. At the rostrum, Kakashi returned to his seat and laughed self-deprecatingly. This kid, Tisk. Hyojin spat lightly. The advantage of pupil Kekii genjutsu was so great and unreasonable. Even if ordinary people put 2 or 3 times the effort, they would all be in vain under a glance. Just like Fuyue's relaxed look when he learned that Xiaoli only knew taijutsu. It could be said that except for Guy, who could accurately judge the opponent's movements by observing the middle and lower body of the opponent, other pure taijutsu ninjas were basically suppressed by the Sharingan's dynamic capture and genjutsu. At the temporary stand, Itachi chuckled and said, Sasuke won. Fuyue put away his previous nervousness and said with a smile, what a pity! Although he said it was a pity, from Fuyue's expression and behavior, it can be clearly seen the joy in his heart. Obviously, his son defeated the enemy who used Hashimen Tanku, which made him feel happy. Mikoto was happy and worried at the same time. While she was happy for Sasuke's progress, she was also faintly worried about whether Naruto could defeat Sasuke as expected in the script and stimulate Sasuke to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. She knew very well that her husband Fuyue had given everything. As long as Sasuke could awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan, Fuyue was willing to sacrifice his life. So as Hyojin planned, stimulating Sasuke to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan without bleeding is the best result for their family. On the field, Sasuke removed Xiaoli's genjutsu and whispered, "I'm sorry." He has the arrogance of the Uchiha clan in his bones. He was inexplicably ashamed of using genjutsu to defeat Xiaoli. After all, Xiaoli didn't know any ninjutsu. Xiaoli shook her head and said, "Thank you, Sasuke, you let me see the power of the Sharingan." Sasuke turned his face to the side and said, "Your taijutsu is not weak." After Sasuke and Xiaoli left the field at the same time, Hyojin immediately announced the next match. The next two matches were between female students, and the level returned to a relatively normal level. Among them, Ziyuen against Sakura, and Yakumo against Ino. Both Ziyuen and Sakura only received ordinary ninja training in the My Hospital. Moreover, they weren't officially accepted as disciples by Tsunade, so the match between the two was quite normal. In the end, Ziyuen defeated Sakura with her physical advantage. The battle between Yakumo and Ino Yamanaka was a little more exciting. The Kurama clan is the genjutsu clan in the village, second only to the Uchiha clan. Although they have declined, their foundation is still there. Yakumo also awakened the genjutsu, so her talent in genjutsu is far better than the average Uchiha clan. The Yamanaka clan is the most powerful genjutsu clan in the village. They can sneak their consciousness into the opponent's body and temporarily control them. They can also search the opponent's brain to collect information. It is an extremely rare and strange genjutsu. The fight between Yakumo and Ino didn't look fancy on the surface, but in fact, it was extremely dangerous. One careless move would result in a quick defeat. Relatively speaking, Yakumo's strength is obviously above Ino's, so in less than 30 seconds, Ino fell into Yakumo's genjutsu and lost the match. Round after round of matches went on without a break. By noon, the first round of matches had come to an end. After a short lunch break, the second round of matches began in the afternoon. In the second round, Naruto faced Fang and Sasuke faced Shino. Because of Hyojin becoming the headmaster of the shinobi school, and because of the tense and complicated situation in the shinobi world, Fang and Shino's strength has improved a lot compared to the original time, but compared to Naruto and Sasuke, they are still slightly inferior and were defeated one after another. After several rounds of elimination, this year only 4 people, Naruto, Sasuke, Yakumo, and Tian, were left. Needless to say, Naruto and Sasuke, except for Ningxi and Xiaoli, the other students basically have no chance of winning against them. Yakumo's genjutsu is too strong, and the students are still young. Almost no one has done any training against genjutsu, so one after another, even Shikamaru, who defeated Sakai and was favored by all the parents, was defeated by Yakumo. And Tian is really rich. The ninja tool scroll on her back is like a treasure chest. There are all kinds of ninja tools, and it seems inexhaustible. In the level of genjutsu, the advantage of this kind of ninja tool is too big, no one can bear it, and Ziyuen was directly forced out of the arena by Tian's hidden weapon continuous bullets. Here is the first one, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 920. After a whole day of competition, the sun was gradually setting in the west. After glancing at Naruto, Yakumo, and Tian, Sasuke's face was no longer cold and arrogant. Instead, it was replaced by a thoughtful expression. His left arm, which had been injured by Xiaoli, had already been healed by the medical ninja. However, after a few rounds of competition, the chakra in his body had been severely depleted. So, it was still hard to say whether he could get the title of first in the same batch. I have the Sharingan, so Yakumo's genjutsu is the least threat to me. Tian is a bit troublesome. She has obviously put in a lot of effort in throwing ninja tools. I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with her with physical skills and ninjutsu. If the opponent is her, I can only choose to use genjutsu. If the opponent is Naruto, Sasuke analyzed the remaining 3 competitors one by one. At this time, he no longer had the thought of defeating his opponent beautifully. There was only one thing on his mind, and that was to win at all costs. In his analysis, Yakumo and Tian were obviously the lowest threat. Among the 3, the one who posed the greatest threat to him was Naruto. Although Yakumo and Tian had obvious advantages, at the same time, they also had their own weaknesses. Only the combination of Naruto's multiple shadow clone technique and Rasengan gave Sasuke little confidence. At this time, Hyojin announced, "Next match, Naruto vs. Sasuke." "It really is Naruto," Sasuke said to himself. Then, without saying anything, he strode directly into the field. Niji, who had almost recovered from his injuries, got out of the medical bed at this time. Listening to Kuroto's announcement on the rostrum, he hurriedly said to Naruto, who was about to enter the field, "Be careful of his Sharingan." Naruto nodded. He now understood that Sasuke was his biggest rival for first place in his batch. As long as he could defeat Sasuke, the title of first place in his batch would be within reach. On the temporary stands. At the same time, Fugaku also heard the list of matchups announced by Kuroto, and his heart suddenly jumped. He and Hyojin have been planning for several months, waiting for this moment. Whether Sasuke can successfully awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan or not depends on this competition, so he can't help but be nervous. Itachi, who was at the side, also changed his previous calmness, and a rare look of nervousness appeared in his eyes. Once Sasuke awakens the Manjikyu Sharingan, then he can ask Hyojin to perform the surgery for Sasuke to fuse with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. At that time, Sasuke will be able to surpass him and never lose his sight. On the main stands, after announcing the lineup, Hyojin sat back and asked Kakashi casually, "Who do you think will win?" Kakashi shook his head. "It's hard to say." Hyojin chuckled and said, "Yeah, it's really hard to say." According to Hyojin's previous estimation, Naruto, who has mastered multiple shadow clone technique and Rasengan, should have no problem defeating Sasuke. But judging from Sasuke's performance today, Kuroto realized that he seemed to have underestimated the 3 Magatama Sharingan and also underestimated Sasuke. In today's competition, Sasuke played the advantage of his pupil Kekai Genkai to the fullest, and the strength of the 3 Magatama Sharingan was also fully demonstrated through Sasuke's performance. And the attention of his parents and brother not only failed to disturb Sasuke's mood, but also made him put down everything and only seek victory. On the other side, looking at Sasuke, who has a childish face but a calm demeanor, 3 generations said, "It seems that Sasuke's talent is no worse than his brother Itachi. Maybe he can surpass Itachi and awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan like Shisui." "Yeah." Jiraiya gently nodded. At this time, Sasuke already has the demeanor of Shisui, who awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 11, and Shisui being able to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan is inseparable from the Third Shinobi War, so in Jiraiya's view, what Sasuke lacks to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan is probably just an opportunity. Tsunade looked a little sad and said, "The Uchiha clan is really full of geniuses. In the past, there were Fuyue, Shisui, Shinichi, Itachi and Sasuke, plus the 2 Uchiha clansmen in Amatsukami, and the mysterious person in Akatsuki. In the past 10 years, the Uchiha clan can be said to be full of geniuses, and this only served to highlight the decline of the Senju clan, which made Tsunade couldn't help but feel sad. 3 generations also sighed and said, "If Rope Tree is still here," sighed. Jiraiya quickly said, "Don't mention those unhappy things, the competition is about to begin." No one said anything more, and all eyes were focused on the field. In the field, Naruto and Sasuke, who stood looking at each other, formed the sign of opposition at the same time. The two of them were originally good friends who talked about everything, but after standing in the field to fight for the first place in the same batch, they had nothing to talk about. There was no greeting, no harsh words, and the two of them instantly entered the state of mind. Finally, he glanced at his parents and brother on the temporary stand. Looking at the anticipation on his family's faces, Sasuke put away all the distracting thoughts and locked his eyes on Naruto, who was opposite him. Naruto is a human pillar, and chakra is more than me. If I get dragged into a stalemate by him, I will definitely lose the competition like Ningxi. The only chance to win is in the first 2 or 3 minutes when I, chakra, still have plenty of time. If I can't win quickly, I will be the one who loses. My father attended my graduation exam under the advice of others. How can I repay him with a failure? No matter what, I must win. According to his own state, and the situation of Ningxi and Naruto's previous fight, Sasuke had a judgment about this competition and made up his mind. The key was in the first few minutes: win quickly, or lose miserably. Therefore, not only did he instantly open his Sharingan, but he also did not hesitate to use his ocular power to the fullest, and 3 Magatama quickly flew in his scarlet eyes. Just like against Ningxi before, Naruto did not hesitate, and immediately quickly formed a seal and shouted, "Multiple shadow clone technique." Bang bang bang! In an instant, the field was filled with white smoke, and in the blink of an eye, hundreds of Naruto appeared, and with the cover of the white smoke, Naruto's real body was hidden among the many shadow clones, and disappeared without a trace. Sasuke, who was already prepared, immediately shot dozens of shurikens in all directions, almost exhausting all the ninja tools in the ninja bag, and at the same time, smashed 1/3 of Naruto's shadow clones. Just when everyone thought that Sasuke was going to rely on throwing ninja tools to fight against Naruto's shadow clones, Hyojin on the rostrum was surprised to find that the ninja tools that Sasuke threw were not only wrapped with steel wires, but these ninja tools were also very orderly distributed, and if they were connected with the wrapped steel wires, it was like a steel wire net that covered the field. At this moment, Sasuke whispered softly, "Chidori?" Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday, thank you. Chapter 921. The steel wires pulled by the shurikens and kunai crisscrossed each other, like a carefully woven steel wire net, evenly covering the entire playground. In the center, several kunai firmly nailed all the wire ends to the ground. Sizzle, above the kunai nailed to the steel wire was Sasuke, whose right hand was flashing with dazzling electric light. In the evening, the light gradually dimmed. The dazzling electric light on Sasuke's body suddenly attracted the attention of everyone present, whether it was the village leaders in the stands, the ninja school teachers, the students' families, or the students on the sidelines. All of them couldn't help but turn their attention to Sasuke. At this time, many people had already seen Sasuke's plan, and they were more and more looking forward to the fierce battle in front of them. In the field, after completing the arrangement, Sasuke did not hesitate and immediately pressed his right hand full of electric light on the kunai nailed to all the steel wire ends under his feet. Sizzle! In an instant, the whole playground was full of electric light. The Chidori on Sasuke's right hand extended all the way along the kunai, along the steel wire, and in the blink of an eye, it covered all the steel wire net. At this moment, the steel wire nets covering the playground were like an electric net, shining the whole playground. Ah, it's so dazzling! What's going on? Hey, there's electric light everywhere, I can't see clearly at all. Caught off guard, many spectators on the sidelines were dazzled by the sudden flash of electric light, and their vision became white, and they couldn't see anything clearly. Bang bang bang! Under this change, Naruto's shadow doppelgangers in the field were also destroyed by the manic thunder and lightning on the electric net, turning into white smoke with a low muffled sound. On the rostrum, Kakashi's eyes widened. This kid. Even Kakashi, who taught Sasuke Chidori, did not expect that Sasuke would come up with this method to deal with Naruto's almost endless shadow doppelgangers. Hyojin, who had already seen a trace of clues, was not too surprised, but secretly thought, Sasuke's understanding of thunder release is really not ordinary. No wonder he could surpass Kakashi in the future and develop Chidori Flow, which is more powerful and more flexible. The current Sasuke obviously can't use Chidori Flow to launch a large-scale thunder release attack like he did in the original time and space. Therefore, he can only use shuriken, kunai, steel wire, and other ninja tools to artificially create a power grid, and then directly output Chidori to the power grid, simulating the effect of Chidori Flow in this form to complete an instantaneous large-scale lightning release attack. On the temporary stands, Itachi couldn't help but be moved, and a trace of relief flashed on his face. Sasuke has really grown up. He hopes that Sasuke can awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan in this battle, but at the same time, he also hopes that Sasuke can grow into a real ninja who knows how to think and analyze. Fuyua smiled reservedly. In fact, our Uchiha's fire release can also achieve this effect. On the field, Sasuke, who has completed a large-scale thunder release attack, his chest is violently heaving like a bellows. Although he has awakened the Samagatama Sharingan at this time, compared to the original time and space, he lacks the Curse of Heaven that Orochi Maru imposed on him. Although Curse of Heaven can corrode the mind and disturb the mind, but after all, it is a kind of use of natural energy, and it can greatly increase the host's chakra amount. And without Curse of Heaven, Sasuke's chakra amount is his biggest shortcoming. At the current age of 12, under normal circumstances, his chakra amount is almost bottomed out after using chakra amount 2 to 3 times, but just before against Xiaoli, he used chakra amount once and several lightning release stimulated him. At this moment, he used the steel wire to cast a large-scale chakra amount, but the consumption of chakra is more than twice that of ordinary chakra amount, so such a large-scale thunder release attack can only be used once. Suppressing the dizziness and muscle discomfort, at the moment when the large-scale thunder release attack is completed, Sasuke used the Samagatama Sharingan in his eye sockets to see through the whole field. Under the attack just now, there are only 7 Narutos that originally filled the entire field. In other words, Naruto's real body is among these 7 Narutos. And after a short moment of astonishment, Naruto also reacted. His real body and shadow clones raised their arms at the same time, preparing to cast multiple shadow clone technique again. Sasuke's eyes suddenly focused. The next few seconds will be the key to victory or defeat. If he is one step ahead of Naruto and finds out Naruto's real body, then he will be the one to win. On the contrary, if he is a step late, and Naruto casts multiple shadow clone technique again, then the balance of victory will tilt towards Naruto. On the main stand, Kakashi was nervous at this time, when he found that after Sasuke's large-scale thunder release attack, there are still 7 Narutos left in the field. He had a premonition. Because even if it is him, it is difficult to find out the real body of Naruto's real body from the 7 scattered Narutos before Naruto casts multiple shadow clone technique again. Hyojin also looked at Sasuke with a playful expression. Sasuke's performance today can be called perfect, but unfortunately, at least at this point in time, Naruto's hard power is stronger than him. As long as Naruto casts multiple shadow clone technique again, then the competition is basically over. But at this moment, Hyojin's face suddenly stiffened. And almost at the same time, Sasuke also moved. His whole body rushed at a Naruto in the field with lightning speed. Looking at his determined figure, it seems that he is completely determined that the target is the real body of Naruto. Because when Sasuke examined the 7 Naruto in the field, only this Naruto deliberately avoided Sasuke's line of sight, and this detail, at the same time, was noticed by Hyojin outside the field and Sasuke in the field. The one who knows how to avoid Sasuke's line of sight is undoubtedly the real body of Naruto. And because it happened suddenly, the inexperienced Naruto did not realize that his correct way to deal with the Sharingan happened to become the flaw that exposed his real body. In an instant, Sasuke flashed in front of Naruto, and at this moment, Naruto's multiple shadow clone technique seal in his hand was only halfway formed. In shock, Naruto even stopped forming the seal in his hand. Sasuke did not waste any time and immediately glared at Naruto, activating the illusion of the Sharingan. Naruto suddenly felt dazed, and his eyelids became extremely heavy, as if he could not open them no matter how hard he tried. Then, his body softened and fell to the ground. Bang bang bang, as Naruto fell to the ground, the remaining shadow clones also turned into white smoke and disappeared from the field. Huff huff, Sasuke, who was panting heavily, had an ecstatic expression on his face. And Naruto, who had just fainted on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes again. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 922. In the blink of an eye, Sasuke swept away nearly 100 of Naruto's doppelgangers on the field, and from the last 7 Naruto, he accurately found the real body of Naruto. The whole process only took a minute. The smooth offensive showed Sasuke's own swift and fierce style, as well as the subtle insight of his Sharingan, incisively and vividly. On the temporary stand, watching Sasuke's proper use of tactics, using illusion to instantly defeat Naruto, Itachi was both gratified and a little regretful, but the corners of his mouth still showed his most sincere emotions. Perhaps in his heart, Sasuke could learn to restrain his arrogance and use tactics flexibly. This gain is not much worse than directly awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Listening to the sound of Naruto falling to the ground, the expression on Fuyue's face was very wonderful. It was a kind of mixed expression of joy, loss, and depression. Compared with her husband next to her, Mikoto was much more indifferent. She smiled at Sasuke, who was sweating and panting in the field, and sighed, "Sasuke has really grown up." On the rostrum, Kakashi praised loudly, "Well done." Sasuke's performance in this game was perfect. Whether it was the formulation and implementation of tactics, or the grasp of the details of the battlefield, he almost reached the limit of what he could do. It seemed that he defeated Naruto quickly and easily, but in fact, as long as there was a slight deviation, he would be the one who lost. The eyes of the 3 generations also lit up. Uchiha has another Jishue. The 3 generations were very glad at this time that Jiraiya accepted Sasuke as his disciple, and early on included Sasuke, the genius of Uchiha, into Naruto's team. Tsunade said calmly, "This kid deserves to be the first in the same batch." Even if she was influenced by the 2nd generation Naruto and didn't have a very good impression of Uchiha, at this moment, she had to admit that Sasuke was the most outstanding one among this batch of students. Even Naruto, who also performed well, was overshadowed by Sasuke. Unlike others who began to praise Sasuke, Hyojin instantly activated the Byakugan at this time and confirmed the state of Naruto. In the past few months, the reason why Kuroto didn't train Naruto to fight against the Sharingan at all is mainly because of the lack of time, because Naruto only mastered Rasengan a few days ago. Before that, Naruto wasn't even proficient enough in the use of Rasengan and multiple Kage doppelganger jutsu, so he couldn't divert his attention to train against the Genjutsu. Or rather, at this age, almost all of the graduates are at the stage of consolidating their foundation and barely mastering 1 or 2 unique skills. They haven't done any specific training on illusion at all, so Yakumo, who was weak and sickly, was able to easily reach the top 4 with the help of Genjutsu. If in another year or 2, when everyone is 13 or 14 years old, they have consolidated their foundation and began to study tactics and various confrontational training, the situation of being killed by Genjutsu will obviously improve. However, Hyojin didn't completely give up, because Naruto's situation is a bit special. Although the tenant in his body is very arrogant, but in Hyojin's previous special training, it helped him again and again, so it's not impossible for him to make a comeback, as long as the tenant in his body is willing to raise its hand. As Hyojin expected, seeing that Naruto was so easily defeated by the Sharingan, Nine-Tails immediately went crazy. Almost at the moment when Naruto fell to the ground, that is, when the surrounding audience just thought that the outcome of the battle had been decided, Naruto suddenly opened his eyes. "You?" Sasuke, who was close, noticed it for the first time, and the joy on his face suddenly froze, and his whole person was stunned. The round of attacks just now has consumed almost all of his chakra. At this moment, not to mention launching ninjutsu, even maintaining the state of Sharingan is very difficult. So when he saw that Naruto broke free from the genjutsu, he suddenly panicked. But then, Naruto's expected counterattack did not happen. After Naruto, who fell to the ground, opened his eyes, his face was full of shock, as if he just saw something incredible. Not only did he not get up immediately, but he also muttered to himself, What a big monster!" Seeing this, Sasuke quickly kicked Naruto. Bang! With a muffled sound, Naruto, who was on the ground, was kicked out of the field by Sasuke. At this time, the audience reacted one after another, and Naruto had been forced out of the field by Sasuke, completely losing the match. Sasuke, who was sitting on the ground, was still scared at this moment. The moment he found that Naruto broke free from the genjutsu, he felt as if his heart was grabbed by someone, and he was so scared that it almost stopped beating. Sasuke did not understand why Naruto was able to break free from his genjutsu in an instant, nor did he understand why Naruto did not immediately counterattack. He only knew that he had no other ability except for that kick just now. At this time, Sasuke, who was covered in cold sweat, looked at Naruto outside the field, and then looked back in the direction of the rostrum. In the midst of the shock, he seemed to be a little unsure whether he had won or not. On the rostrum, Hyojin smiled, then got up and announced, "Uchiha Sasuke wins." Looking at Naruto's expression as if he had seen a ghost, Hyojin knew that Naruto must have seen the tenant who lived in his body in his spiritual world. This also showed that Nine-Tails did lend a helping hand to Naruto and dragged Naruto out of Sasuke's genjutsu. For Hyojin, this was an acceptable ending. Nine-Tails pulled Naruto into the spiritual world, and for the first time, their image was revealed in Naruto's eyes. This meant that Nine-Tails either felt pressure from the Akatsuki organization and decided to cooperate with Naruto, or Nine-Tails accepted the careless Naruto. After all, Naruto's entire childhood had been hated and rejected by others. This was inexplicably similar to Nine-Tails. On the field, waving to his family on the temporary stand, Sasuke squeezed out a smile that was not so carefree. Suddenly, a gust of night wind blew. Sasuke felt a chill on his body, and only then did he realize that the clothes on his back were completely soaked in cold sweat, so his face sank, and he thought to himself, "Damn it." He never thought that Naruto could give him so much pressure, especially when Naruto opened his eyes just now. Not only did it make him break out in cold sweat, but it also made his heart palpitate until now. Glancing at Naruto, who was surrounded by the medical class in the distance, he secretly made up his mind, "Just you wait, Naruto, next time I will definitely defeat you cleanly." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the classmate who tipped yesterday, thank you. Chapter 923. Although the episode of Naruto breaking free from Sasuke's genjutsu caused many people to be surprised, it did not change the situation of the battle. In the end, the battle ended with Sasuke's victory. On the temporary stands, Fuyue said, "It seems that the fifth Sama has miscalculated." Itachi on the side quickly said, Father, Naruto-sama will not make a mistake. This should also be within Naruto-sama's expectations. Well, it must be like this. Mikoto looked at her husband and then looked at her son and shook her head with a smile. In any case, Mikoto was satisfied with such a result. It would be best if Sasuke could awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan, but now, he can put down his arrogance and think and analyze like a real ninja. In Mikoto's view, this is a huge growth that is not inferior to awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. On the rostrum, Hyojin waved his hand expressionlessly and signaled the teachers to clean up the playground and prepare for the next match. Although he was a little regretful that Naruto did not defeat Sasuke, his mind was not on it at this moment. Because the action of the Nine Tails just now made Hyojin see a possibility, that is, to let the Nine Tails and Naruto completely open their hearts, so that Naruto can become the perfect Jinchuriki in advance. As long as Naruto does this, then Sasuke will always be suppressed by Naruto before he awakens the Manjikyu Sharingan. At that time, it will be easy to find an opportunity to stimulate Sasuke. After the teachers cleaned up the playground, Hyojin immediately announced the second match. The battle between Yakumo and Tian also attracted a lot of people's attention. After all, although there are many female ninjas in the shinobi world, among the strong ninjas there are still male ninjas. It was quite rare for Yakumo and Tian, who were both female ninjas, to be able to defeat so many of their peers and enter the top 4. Before this, the Kurama clan even had the idea of letting Yakumo leave the school, because while awakening the powerful Kekii limit, Yakumo's frail body was also deteriorating. In the end, it was Hyojin who invited Tsunade and asked Tsunade to personally nurse Yakumo's body, allowing Yakumo to persist until graduation. But after an entire day of fighting, Ba Yun had reached her limit, so she stood in the middle of the field with a dispirited expression. Unlike Yakumo, Tian is in a good state because she has been fighting with ninja tools. Chakra's consumption is far less than Yakumo's, and because she entered the top 4, she is full of confidence. The duel between the two of them soon began. Tian, who knew how powerful the Hachi cloud illusions were, closed her eyes as soon as the battle started, sealing off her vision, which was the most easily affected by the illusions. She then quickly retreated while opening her ninjutsu scroll. In an instant, she launched an indiscriminate attack on the entire field. Obsidian nodded, put away his smile, and said seriously, "Let me tell you a secret, Manjikyu Sharingan is not the end of the evolution of Manjikyu Sharingan, there is a higher form of Manjikyu Sharingan above it, that is Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Itachi was taken aback, and he couldn't help but show a bit of surprise on his face, but what surprised him was not the matter of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, but the fact that Obsidian also knows the secret of Manjikyu Sharingan. Is he really Madara Uchiha? Suddenly, a thought came into Itachi's mind. Looking at the surprise on Itachi's face, Obsidian was very satisfied, so he continued, but the evolution of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan requires some special conditions. Itachi pondered for a moment and said deliberately, "You mean you need another pair of Manjikyu Sharingan? You really are a smart person, you understand it immediately." After a pause, Obsidian said, "The evolution of Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan requires the fusion of two pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan that are related by blood, so I suspect that the Homusubi who took away your father's Manjikyu Sharingan is likely to be a relative of your family, and a very close relative. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes.